like, wow, this is like, I'm not going to be able to find a club here, and like I've played for Hearts first team 6 months ago. How on earth like will no one sign me?
Sean McKirdy, who owns a gym that we're in today and is a former professional footballer. Your own gym and 5 in the morning.
From a young age had typical young boy dream, professional footballer, and was probably then the proverbial golden boy, and then probably quite a quick decline as we can go into. I remember like playing my first game for the under-20s at like 14. Between the ages like 12 and 14, I managed to go and train with like Man United, Liverpool, Ipswich, Sunderland, a couple other clubs, as well as going to visit Celtic, Rangers, Hearts, Hibs. We played a trial game for Liverpool, and you've got like Alexander-Arnold, Harry Wilson, I think Ryan Kent. Started in the SPL, must have been like September, October time, and by the following summer I'd been released. The first gym I'd ever worked at, the owner was giving up. One thing led to another, as it does with these things, signed the lease. So we do sort of small group personal training, where it's small groups of like 4 to 6 with coaches, so that clients can get almost like a one-to-one attention to detail, but they don't have quite the inflexibility or price tag. There was one week where on the Monday I came in, we got told the kit delivery had been delayed, and we were supposed to be opening that weekend, so it was like, right, that's a bit of an issue. Kit eventually came, they'd sent the wrong kit. At the time, the people that were going to take over the old lease fell out, so it's like, right, now I've got 2 leases on my head for another long time, and then an accountant mess up meant we owed HMRC 10 grand that was due 2 days later.
I've had 2 or 3 lately where I'm like, I don't think I'm going to figure this one out. I think this is it.
Like the thought of driving home, like, how do I break this? Like, what do I tell them?
Welcome to the show where we talk to successful people about the bits you don't see. Today we're talking to Sean McKirdy, who owns a gym that we're in today and is a former professional footballer. So thank you very much for coming on, Sean. How are you doing?
I'm good. I always normally say delighted to be here, but I'm actually in my own gym. But I'm delighted to be on. It's been good to kind of see it kick off, and I'm looking forward to getting involved.
Nice. So in your own gym and 5 in the morning.
It's the first time, A, that I've ever done this in the gym setting, and B, that someone's beat me to a wake-up call. Normally I'm the one that's like, oh, we'll do something early, and people are like, nah, no chance. And then when you said 4:45, I was like, that's early even for me, but I like it as a little challenge.
To be fair, it was quite hard for me to get up this morning, because normally I'm like up at 4 every morning and I'm in such good routine. But see, since I've been home, because obviously
Totally
I'm home,
different.
I'm here, there and everywhere, and I'm trains down to Birmingham and through to Glasgow and whatever, so I'm like...
A bit different with this weather as well.
I was like, oh yeah, great idea, getting up at 4, my alarm went off.
Sounds good, and then it's...
my alarm was, what, 3:45, and I was like, oh, don't have to plan to do this anymore.
No, I can relate to that.
So yeah, talk me through it. You've got the gym, ex-footballer, like, go right from the start. Talk me through your life.
Yeah, it's only when you actually do one of these you realise probably quite a lot has happened. I suppose probably from a young age had typical young boy dream, professional footballer and stuff like that. Probably had a few breaks in circumstance, luck. Primarily when I was about 12, I got invited to go to Broughton High School as like the pilot performance school, where, long story short, we got football as a subject.
Oh, wow.
And I think for me that was like a real game changer, where even at a young age it was like, I quite like this lifestyle, like I'm getting a lot of help in terms of training, once a day at school, training at my club, getting sports psychologists, and so it just kind of like opened my eyes up to a world where it's like, maybe there's something in this. I can say it now because I'm no longer that. Was probably then the proverbial golden boy from 13 to 17, where it's like that person everyone knows, the one that's going to make it, the one that everyone's talking about, and then probably quite a quick decline as we can go into it, sort of 17, 18. Frittered about for a few more years at a few other clubs, full-time, part-time, before getting started in personal training. Then one thing led to another, sort of employed to self-employed. Moved through the various stages before, probably about 4 years ago now, managed to get my first gym space, and then probably about this time last year we signed the lease to this new place, and moved in May last year. So it's been a busy few years getting that up to speed, but yeah, probably lots for you to delve into there.
Yeah, God, I don't actually know where to start. I'm like, do I start at the end or do I start at the start? Let's start at the start. So, golden boy, what's that like? Because like, mate, when you're that age, it must be so cool to be like the football kid.
Do you know what? It's so weird that I probably look back on it with totally a different set of eyes now, where I'm like, actually, it was really cool. But bizarrely, like I always say to people, for one reason or another, at times it did weigh quite heavily, where it was like people are expecting a lot of me here, and weirdly, compared to the normal sort of story you hear on stuff like this, it was actually like external rather than internal, that like my family were so chilled out about it. It was like never a big deal. They were never pushy. And like even then, it was probably a lot of the pressure that came from myself, where it's like, right, okay, these sorts of clubs are looking at you. These sorts of clubs are asking you to come and train with them. You need to be like at it every single day, which I think there's probably positives and negatives from. Like I think there's a lot of stuff that I learned there that's carried me in really good stead throughout football and then in sort of working life. But I can only realise now that probably until I was like 18, I didn't have any off switch at all. And I think that's maybe in a different light to having the same thing in business, because you'll know that like when you run your own business, you probably are never switched off entirely. But I think it's just a different thing, where in football, the thing I always struggled with is it was out with your control a lot of the time, whereas at least in business, it's like, okay, a lot of stuff can go wrong, a lot of stuff can change, but if you do your part, the chances of success are much higher. Whereas football, I had luck work for and against me. You know, at some points it was like a coach that really took a shine to me, that probably elevated my career more than it otherwise might have, and then there was other times where it was like a real struggle. So looking back, it was really cool, and it is a strange feeling. Like when I talk to my girlfriend or like friends and stuff, they're like when you were like 13, 14, probably like everyone in the country was talking about you, and it is like a strange feeling to find that. And even now, the odd time you get like people that still recognise you and remember you, and I'm like, you need to get a life. Like, how do you still remember me from this long ago? So yeah, I definitely think I look back on it differently from maybe how I experienced it at the time.
Yeah, God, there must be so much pressure. And the thing that I've always thought about you, that I've actually drawn some parallels with from what you've said there, is I've always thought you're really mature for your age. Like, because we obviously met, I think, first at the David Lloyd when you were doing Blaze, and then we kind of spoke about business and stuff, and you were like young at the time. I don't know, how old would you have been, like early 20s?
Probably like 19, 20,
yeah. And I just remember thinking, like, you're so far more mature than that age, and now it makes so much sense that you had all that pressure on you.
I do wonder as well whether, because definitely I probably experience that more now in like business settings, I do wonder whether football helped that a lot, because like from probably 13, 14, I was always thrust into situations with older people, sort of like
adult situations as well.
Like, I remember like playing my first game for the under 20s at like 14, and so like you're playing with like 18, 19, 20 year olds plus overagers. Like I first trained with the first team when I was like 14 and still at school, so I think you're just like forced to grow up really quickly. And so I always say to people, in like a fitness setting, but also probably I dare say in like a life skills business setting, that although my age might be quite young, I've probably had the same amount of years of experience working with adults as them, that if I've done it from 14, I've done it for 12 years, whereas a lot of people, if they start coming out of uni at 24 and doing it then, it's like their same 12 years is another 8, 10 years on from me. So I definitely think it helped a lot in that setting.
Yeah, so talk me through like the school thing, because I've never heard of that before.
So it's weird, like now that I look back on it, it's a much more common thing now, but what happens is a lot of clubs now do it themselves. So whereas we did it with SFA, a lot of clubs did it with themselves. I don't mean this in an ill-spoken way at all, but it was new, where it probably wasn't run like perfectly. There was a lot of bits, and I have to be careful, because like I'm still close with a couple of the boys that were on the programme, but I'm sure they wouldn't mind me saying, I don't think we were probably the standard the SFA had imagined when they first set out the programme, but they basically struggled to fill it because it was quite a new concept. There was a bit of kickback at the time from some of like the pro clubs, and so at the time I was at Boys Club actually when I first went to Broughton, and most of the boys in the programme were sort of Boys Club rather than Hearts, Hibs, Celtic, Rangers. So again, kind of probably a bit of luck getting into that I don't know at that stage, because that was probably before I'd hit my sort of peak at that age, and I don't know whether I would have got in if, you know, the full array of players at that stage had went for it. So yeah, we just got football once a day as a subject. It would replace like home economics, sciences, stuff like that. And we would just go out and train. Probably the bit that made the longest lasting impact was as well on a Friday, we would have like a sports science and then sports psychology session, which I think definitely like at a really, really young age opened my eyes up, although it's not the same thing, to this kind of thing as a career, where you're like, actually there's a lot of that quite interests me. There's a lot of parallels between like what I've learned in the past and what I could maybe do going forward.
Yeah, I'm such a big believer as well in do what you want. I don't think school at all teaches you to do what you want. It teaches you to do your 10 subjects and then you whittle that down to 8 and then 6, and I can see that you completely agree. Whereas, like, I guess you've got a little bit lucky there, but I think that it would be better if schools did a lot more of that, like actual relevant stuff.
It's hard because we've had this conversation before with a few people in the gym. It's like I have got such a unique and probably biased view of school because I was the one in a million that got it really good. Where I got football as a subject, I got to miss some of the stuff that just would have had no relevance to my life, but also I am probably from about 14. I was training with various clubs down south. I was going on like sort of Scotland trips and stuff, so I would miss like a week of school a term at least to go to these tournaments. And I, again, probably a bit of luck with my guidance teacher that was the most supportive person in the world, that sort of fought my corner, that's like, you're missing prelims, cool, like, and I probably did my bit where she knew like, he won't be an idiot about this, he'll go and do the stuff he needs to do, but like, I do think when I see it, I'm like, actually, there's so much I've learned over the last 3-4 years that I'm like, this must be more relevant to teach kids this in school than some of the stuff we were doing. It's like, I can honestly say a lot of it I've never ever used, whereas there's other stuff that I'm like, that would have been really handy to know at some stage.
100%. Like a lot of the stuff that you're learning now, like you've done like a course on sleep, I've seen, you're always doing courses to better yourself for here. And all of those things, it's like, whenever I learn anything like that, I'm like, why has nobody ever told me this before? Which I'm sure that you probably get all the time.
It's the same thing as well. I think with schools, it's not even just what you're learning, it's the context you're learning it about that it's easy to say, but I dare say if you and I had learned maths in spreadsheets, working with like numbers and finances, okay, at that age it might not have been as relevant, but I think it would have been more interesting than to learn about it as this like abstract concept where like I don't see how this is ever going to apply to me, whereas it's like actually now, like speaking to people, I'm like, I wish I knew how to use spreadsheets a bit better. I wish I knew how to work out those numbers a little bit better.
That's a good point. I love spreadsheets. Like I put everything in spreadsheets, and again, as you say, nobody's ever taught me it. Like I think maybe once in like computing, it was like this is a spreadsheet.
At you for a tiny bit.
And that's such a good point. Whereas, with maths, it's the classic, what is it that everyone always says, Pythagoras theorem. Like
that's the one that always
when
comes
have you used
out,
that since school? Right, talk to me about the clubs, because you've mentioned clubs down south are interested, clubs here, I obviously know some of your path, but talk us through kind of football and path.
So again, I was probably in quite a unique situation where I kind of hit my peak when I was at boys club, so I was at Hutchie Vale at the time, and we were probably quite a unique boys club where we had just amassed like a really uniquely strong squad. So a couple of the guys are actually still playing professionally even now. So there was like, same thing, although I'm saying maybe I was the golden boy, there was a couple in that group who were very widely talked about and stuff. And so a lot of clubs started paying attention to our sort of team. And the advantage we had is that because we weren't signed to a professional club, so we weren't signed to Hearts, Hibs, whatever, we could go and train with various clubs. So when I was probably between the ages like 12 and 14, I managed to go and train with like Man United, Liverpool, Ipswich, Sunderland, a couple other clubs, as well as going to visit Celtic, Rangers, Hearts, Hibs kind of thing in Scotland. So I think it just gave me like a really unique perspective where it's like, actually, you've got close with these guys. Like you go down to Liverpool and it was myself and a guy, Regan Hendricks, who I'm still quite close with now. And like we played a trial game for Liverpool and you've got like Alexander Arnold, Harry Wilson, I think Ryan Kent was there, and you're like, wow, like this is like a really strong squad. And so that was like, again, just a really unique experience that although I decided not to go down that road in the end, it was like actually you picked up a lot at a very young age.
Yeah. So why did you decide not to go down that?
For me, so you obviously couldn't sign for one of those clubs till you were 16. And so for me, I got to a stage at like 14 where I was like, maybe I'm stagnating a little bit at boys club. It was getting to a stage where it's like, okay, the coaching was amazing. Like we had one of the best coaches around and I was like, I'm confident that is as good as I'm going to get if I go to a sort of pro youth club. But I'm not so sure about the teams we're playing. You know, we would go and win 11, 12-0 every second week. And it's like, okay, you're getting a couple of good games a season, but not much else. And I'd had a season where I thought, maybe I'm stagnating a little bit, and probably as like a precursor for what was to come in the rest of my life. I don't like that feeling of standing still. It's very much like, actually, I want to push on. I want to go and challenge myself. And probably even at that age, like whether it's like ego, whether it's mentality, I probably also wanted to be the first one from my team to go and do it, because there was 3 or 4 of us that were training with these various clubs. I probably wanted to be the first one that kind of broke the mold and got out the band and said, right, I'm going to go and do my own thing here. I'm going to go and be the one that does it. And then I'd like to say now, I wasn't biased because I was a Hearts fan, but I dare say that played a part, where it's like I've watched them with my dad since I was 6 years old, but also I was probably mature enough at a young age to know I've got a chance here of moving up the ranks quite quickly. Whereas when I went and visited Celtic, when I went and visited Rangers, it's like, I'll probably be one of many here. Maybe I'll be at the top of that pile, but it's still a tough pile to move through. Whereas at Hearts, it was like, actually, even before I'd signed, they were like, oh, you'll be looking at sort of moving up the ranks pretty quick and stuff. So it just made sense in a lot of ways to me.
Yeah, and then you sort of broke through at Hearts. Talk about that.
That's right. So I'd sort of always played like up age groups and stuff like that, and I'd had a coach at the time, Darren Murray, who was sort of like my biggest supporter. He was like playing.
He rings a bell. Was he like head of the academy?
Yeah, that's right.
I had a couple of friends about at Hearts.
So he's like, I think he played me in the under-20s when I was like 14, like still at school and stuff like that. And so like he kind of always pushed for me. And then when he left with Robbie Nielsen, ironically, I sort of fell out of it a lot with the 20s. Or like the older age groups at the time. So I went back to playing a bit closer to my own age, went full-time, first season full-time. I made my debut in the Petrofac, I think it was at the time, the sort of Challenge Cup. And I never think of it as a real debut, because it was one of them where like first team game on the Saturday was Hibs, first team game the next Saturday was Rangers, midweek it was a load of young boys. And then at the end of that season, I made my debut in the Championship. And I think, to be honest, I was probably just like the best of the young group at that time, where they were looking for a token debut at the end of the season. I think it was one of them where it's like, actually, we need someone to be the young guy breaking through. Did pretty well on my debut, came back for pre-season, and just the nature of pre-season, you're probably in and around with the first team a lot more. And even by like myself, who is probably not too kind to themselves, I had a really good pre-season, and it was like, actually I could tell they were like sort of reevaluating things. And then as the sort of season started, when Hearts were back in the SPL, was kind of a fully fledged part of the first team squad, trained with them every day on the bench and stuff like that, and then made a few appearances in the league, and then just dropped out quite quickly after that for a variety of reasons. And then it was strange, like I started in the SPL, must have been like September, October time, and by the following summer I'd been released, which is like fairly unusual in youth football circles, to go from like one extreme high to such a low.
Yeah, that's mental, right? We're going to come back to that, because that's the first thing I want to talk about in the bits you don't see. But you've then gone from there to, there was a couple other clubs and stuff, I think we'll catch up on them later. You've then moved into the gym and stuff. How have we got to sitting in your gym here?
Again, maybe I'm actually got a bad habit of saying luck, because not everything can be luck, but probably did a similar route where I started employed, in various gyms, leisure centres and stuff like that. Did a little bit of work, and probably did it for a couple of years alongside playing semi-pro football. And at the time, I very much sort of thought of football first, where it's like, actually, even though I'm only maybe training a couple of nights a week, playing on a Saturday, I build my life around that rather than the work aspect. And then it got to a family holiday. I remember it quite clearly. I was probably like 20 or something. And I was like, do you know what, like, actually this isn't the thing for me doing personal training anymore. I was like, I want to have like a stable job, or I want to have a job where I can grow quite quickly, or like this just isn't ticking the box. And it was kind of like, right, okay, that's what you can do. And then I was like, actually, what if I like broke down the numbers here of what this would look like being self-employed rather than like working for somebody else? And it was like, actually, I think I can hit the number of clients I want to hit to make this the job that I want it to be, kind of thing. So I did that, and then it escalated really quick to the point I actually hadn't made the decision, but I kind of made my mind up I was going to give football up because I wanted to like go all in on this. And then just as I'd sort of gathered a bit of momentum, this must have been like the summer of 2019, because just as I'd gathered a bit of momentum was when COVID hit. And so I was like, oh shit, I've like worked for like the last year building up a good bit of momentum. And now everything's fallen bits. And so during COVID, like, to be honest, just because of the way I was wired, it's not because I saw any great opportunity or anything. I just worked even harder. I was like, well, do you know what? I'm going to do more courses. I'm going to be there for my clients. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And so then after COVID, that goodwill had sort of carried, and I'd had like a wee back garden gym where I was then able to train people in the latter stages, and I was up to doing like 40, 50, 60 one sessions a week, and I was like, do you know what, maybe I could like look for my own space. So I looked for a few, they weren't the right thing, and then in a nice twist of fate, the first gym I'd ever worked at, the owner was giving up. So I saw it on like one of these like Rightmove or something. I was like, oh my God, that's like Mike's old place that was my first job. And I was like, oh, it's probably too big for me. It's a bit more expensive than I'm looking for, but I'll go and have a look. One thing led to another, as it does with these things. Signed the lease during COVID. And then it was a few years probably learning how to actually run a business, where it's like, right, we've just done something here. I probably wasn't ready to do this, but you never are. And then after about 18 months to 2 years in the old space, it was like, all right, I think you've actually like got something here. Like there's enough people signing up, there's enough people staying, there's maybe something in this where like there's legs to it. And then we were like, right, if this is going to be a proper business, I don't think this is the place for it. It was under commercial flats, it was a bit dark, it was a bit dingy. And so we managed to find this place, and it was probably 12 to 18 months of negotiations all told, but then we moved in here, as I say, sort of May last year, and haven't looked back from that.
Now, talk to me about the gym, because it's cool and it's different, and it's not like going to the David Lloyd or like whatever. What do you have going on here?
So kind of the problem, I suppose, that we saw was that when I was a one-to-one PT, clients got really, really good results when they were able to train multiple times per week. The clients that were difficult were the ones that could do one PT per week, because it was kind of like they tasted the champagne, where it's like, this is like the good stuff, but I can only afford it once a week. And then them trying to go to the gym on their own was like, this isn't going to happen. And so it was like, how do we make this a model that makes that problem less, coupled with the fact that it's like, actually, I missed bits from football where it's like the social environment, the team environment, training with probably like an athletic purpose in mind, rather than just being like a bodybuilding gym. And so we do sort of small group personal training, where it's small groups of like 4 to 6 with coaches, so that clients can get almost like a one-to-one attention to detail, but they don't have quite the inflexibility or price tag associated with it. And then we do sort of group classes to support it. So it means people come an average of like 2.7 times a week, which is way higher than the normal gym, and they get coached every time they sort of come into the building. And I think, like, again, this wasn't deliberate, it was purely a function of the fact we never had enough space. No one can really use the gym for open gym. So I think for us it creates a nice culture as well, where it's like, actually people come in and they're like, see people they know, they see coaches they know, there's no one doing their own thing in the corner. And so we've just found that it creates a really nice atmosphere for people.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that you've probably, I don't know if you would have predicted this or not, but I think that you've caught the kind of trend of people moving more towards that.
We've probably caught a couple of things where, like, post-COVID, I think people are willing to spend more than ever on their health and wellness. I think they value it more. And I also think, which we never anticipated, like the group thing was always going to be social. But I think now, where a lot of people work from home, a lot of people don't go out and drink as much, I think like the social aspect of the gym plays a huge part for them, where they're like, actually, I get to know other people, I get to see other people, I get to chat to Paul on a Tuesday afternoon. And so I definitely think that's helped us massively, and something that we've timed it right with there.
Now, there's loads of gyms that are kind of similar to this. I'd say you're quite unique. There's loads in Dubai, obviously, where I live, that feel like they're kind of ahead of the trend of the UK. Is there a lot like this here?
It's hard without... Can you swear on this podcast?
Yeah.
It's hard without being a dick. But it's like, there's a fair few, but in my opinion, not many that are done properly. And what I mean by that is, like for us, we employ all the staff, so it's like then they've got a vested interest in the business. We have a timetable that's fixed with 120 sessions a week. We have SOPs for staff to follow to ensure it's a similar session. We do seminars, we get external speakers in. So for me, like, there's a lot of people that are doing it, and it's no fault of theirs, but they're maybe just trying to do it as like a one-person band, where it's like, actually, like, you can't give the clients what they need, because you're like, the benefits for us of small group personal training are the social element and the flexibility, where it's like, that's actually what you're paying for. But then if you're doing it as one person, you can't really offer that flexibility. Whereas for us, we can offer sessions from 6 in the morning till 9 at night. We can offer multiple sessions at a time, all these kind of things. And then equally, I think a lot of people try and do that thing where it's like small group personal training in a gym, whereas we've designed a gym for that, which I think is a subtle difference, but
I think
does
that's
make
a
a
massive
big difference
difference,
to
yeah.
clients, where it's like actually every bit of the gym is thought out. There's a reason that's there and that's there. There's a reason that like our classes, which are the most intense part, are as far away from reception as possible, so that if someone new comes in, they don't see the intimidating thing straight away. And so there's a lot of thought went into it that I just think a lot of people aren't doing right. And for us, like, that is a big thing, that like there's an opportunity in Edinburgh where Edinburgh probably should have more of these types of things. That if you go to London, there's a lot of them, Dubai, there's a lot of them, America, there's a lot of them. It's like, actually, Edinburgh's got a couple that do it really well, but there's probably not many that do it. And I think it's definitely that thing that's relevant to a podcast like this, because I have so nearly been caught in it, and it's only because of good mentors that I've not been. Is a lot of people I know who kind of do it, they either do it like half-heartedly or dip their toe in, or they do it well, and then decide to start changing their offering or adding new stuff. And it's like, there is absolutely a time for that, but it's like there's also a time for just doing it really well, because as soon as I think you start adding other stuff in, you dilute the product a little bit, where it's like, we would love to have more space so that we could do yoga, we could do Pilates, we could do different stuff, but it's like, actually, we need to be really good at what our core offering is, and until we've absolutely nailed that, where there's not a fraction of doubt it's going to be the best at that, there's no need to branch off too much into other stuff. And especially in fitness, it's that fine line between like sticking true to what you believe in, but not being a dinosaur where you're not aware of trends. And it's like, how can we sort of hover the middle of those two things, where it's like, these are our beliefs, this is where the industry's going, where can we sort of sit in between? And that's, as I've said to you, Dubai is very much on my list, but I go to London a lot, I've been to America a lot, just to try and see where the industry's heading, because those are the places you're going to see it. It's probably not going to be in Scotland, unfortunately. That's the sort of like frontier of gyms that are trying to move us forward.
Yeah, there's so many in Dubai now that are like, they're all communities, exactly as you say. Everything that you're saying there, it's like, it's all of those things. I can think of 4 off the top of my head, and that's just ones that like, I know somebody that goes to it. There's so many there now. I think that the key thing for you here is, I think you've had a lot of things kind of line up in terms of your skills, your understanding, you understand people, and you understand like how to market and stuff like that, that you've had all these things kind of come together. And it was a podcast, I don't know if it was Stephen Bartlett or Chris Williamson, one of the two. It was Stephen Bartlett live, and he was like, having random but complementary skills in something is so important. And I think that you've got that here, that you've got all these skills that have just come together to be perfect for what you're doing.
Especially because like that's the thing, it's like, I know, I mean, some of the coaches I employ, and definitely a lot of coaches that run gyms like this over Edinburgh, they probably have better technical knowledge than me of exercise, but I would argue a lot of them, they don't understand people as well. And it's like, actually, how do we make this as comfortable an environment as possible? How do we make it, it's intentional that there's no mirrors and stuff like that. And so it's like, actually, this blend of stuff is probably what makes it unique, rather than there's nothing actually unique about here. It's just that combination of stuff together that is maybe what makes it a bit unique. And that makes it the
best. Whereas like, you're not the best at anything, but put all your stuff together, you're the best at doing what you do. That's it. I think you've nailed it there. So we spoke before about like membership numbers and stuff. You always seem to be quite high up towards what you can actually fit. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, it's an ever-evolving conversation. So we probably sit at the minute anywhere between sort of like 205 to 225, depending on, you have up seasons, down seasons, especially like as it gets to sort of Christmas time, it tends to dwindle, and now it's picking back up. For us, in terms of like how many we can hold, it's a really flexible number, because we're probably almost there where, in the last 6 months, we've had to really slow down marketing, because it's like, actually, we're getting too full, and then we've had to speed it up. But obviously there is nuance where if more people wanted to train during the day, or if they wanted to train at 10 a.m, we could take on another 50 to 100 customers, but it's hard to market directly to that. So for us, we've always kind of said, this is the year where we've got a sort of price rise for existing members, we've got a price rise for new members. It's like, actually, let's just nail this part of it, and then if we then get to the middle end of the year, it's like, right, what can we maybe do to branch out that offering a little bit to take advantage of, it's not dead time, but between 10:30 and 4, it's like, it's not that busy other than maybe the lunchtime hour, and it's like, right, what do we do to solve that? Is it off-peak stuff? Is it going to corporate and getting them in? So that's kind of where we've hovered. But, you know, I think it's probably one of these things on a podcast like this, the type of person that's going to listen to it or watch it. You surround yourself with like quite high achievers, and so like to me, I'm like, it's like 220 odd, and it's like actually most gyms that do this sort of thing don't get anywhere near those numbers, but I'm probably chasing the people that do 250 or 300, and so it's easy to play it down when it's like actually the average customer stays with us for like 21 months, which at the price tag we've got for a gym is like a long time for someone to invest and put their trust in you and stuff like that. So yeah, we kind of hover about there. The issue, as with anything, because we are capped sessions, is 6 a.m, 7 a.m, 8 p.m, 6 p.m, you're going to be busy. Yeah. It's like people are going to like branch around those slots, and it's like, how do we make it so that people aren't paying all this money and they can't get in, but equally we're making it work as a business where we're maximizing demand.
It's such a balance.
Yeah, it's tough. And it's like, you're always like too far one way or the other. It's like 2 weeks ago I was like, the sessions aren't full enough. Like for us as a business, like there's too many gaps here, like we need more people in. And then like this week I'm like, there's wait lists all over the place here. We're gonna have to like manage this to do it. And I think that's one of the things that like probably is a benefit and a negative to us. And it's like a conversation to me as to like how we scale is that like I certainly, and probably as a team, we go above and beyond where it's like, if there's a wait list, we'll see, can another coach put something on? Can we put an extra class on? Can we make things work where we're never ruining the service, but we're trying our best to help people? And I think like it's a really interesting thing because it is what makes it unique. But for me, the conversation is like, how do you scale that? And it's like probably getting people in who know the culture and building up with people who've been involved in it, which is definitely something that as we come into this year will be a conversation to look at.
Yeah, that makes sense. Right, talk to me about some of the client wins. I don't know, like if you've got anyone you can think of that.
Do you know what? It's funny because we've probably got like loads of people that have had the traditional lost loads of weight, like put on loads of muscle. Like we've got people here that will have lost like 30, 40 kilos, which in stone is like insane across the course of their time with us. But actually it's probably the people that are like now have came in as like not gym goers and they're going and taking part in like fitness competitions. Like they'll go and sign up to fitness competition, take part in it. It's like after sessions we'll sometimes like walk along Easter Road and like see 4 members out for a coffee together that had never known each other before the gym. We've had a few obviously quite personal ones, but like members who have stemmed or repaired health issues, which for me is like it's probably becoming more pertinent as I sort of gain more knowledge around. Actually, we all want to look better, we all want to feel better, but ultimately we probably want to live longer and better. And like some of the ones, like people that have been able to come off medication they've been on for years, people that have got a different report from their doctor all of a sudden. So there's just been so many over the years, and that's the thing is like naturally as someone who is driven, as someone who like always wants to push boundaries, you think of the 10 out of the 220 members who aren't winning, and it's like actually there's another 200 plus who are setting PBs every day, who are losing weight, who are gaining muscle, who are doing these competitions. And it's like it is only when you probably take a step out and come back into it that's like actually like this is pretty unique to have this many people on a positive path in a normal gym setting.
People like us are probably quite harsh on ourselves as well, where you focus on that 10 that don't do well rather than the 100 that have done pretty well and the 100 and whatever that have done great.
And that's the thing as well, for me over the last year, it's not there yet, but it's definitely sunk in more as well, is that like a lot of people that come here don't view goals in the same way that I would. It's like actually we've got a 78-year-old couple who come, and they're like, if in 3 years like we're the same as we are today, that is like the best progress we could ever imagine. And it's like actually like there's a lot of people here that's like they've got so much going on, like they're very high up at work, they've got kids, they've got families, and it's like actually coming here for 3 times a week keeps me where I am today. That's like otherwise I would go like off the rail. And it's like actually it's a different kind of win, but it's probably just as important a win as the other ones. And I think that's where we probably come into our own, is like I've always had this opinion that like when someone is in the place mentally to change, they are going to make change regardless if they've got probably a good place or a bad place. If they are in that mindset, it's like they'll find a way to change. Whereas I think what we do a good job of is keeping people moving at the times they're not in that headspace. That's like, rather than going like crash and burn, it's like actually right up at the top, but then instead of coming right down to base, I maybe just hover a bit lower and sort of keep them going, so that when life allows them to push a bit more, instead of starting from zero again, they're starting from midway.
That makes sense. Right, what's your proudest moment of anything?
Oh wow. It's such a cliche answer, but especially looking back on it, I would have to probably say making my debut for Hearts, like just having my family there, like having been to games as a season ticket holder with my dad for 10 years before that point, like doing that was pretty cool. Otherwise, I would say is like captain in Scotland. So although it was like youth tournaments where there was like 100 people there, actually being able to like walk out and sing the national anthem as captain, it's like, again, that's one that like I'm probably bad for. A lot of this stuff has passed me by in a blur, where I'm like, I don't probably appreciate like how unique that was, but that's something that even at the time I did kind of appreciate and was like, oh wow, that's something pretty special. And then from a work perspective, like the first day of opening here, like I think we had like 70 or 80 of the members come down, do workouts, but like even people just coming and saying like hello and how proud they are of you, and to be like, actually we've made an impact in that many people's lives that like they're willing to give up their time to just come and check out our new space. And it was like existing members rather than the new people. That was really nice, because it's like actually they've now seen you go from this initial place, build up to this point now.
And that's testament to like the community that you've built.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think that probably people like us are quite bad for realizing that we have done well at points. Like I don't actually give myself credit for anything that I do, and then when you look back, it's like, oh shit, that was actually really good.
And that's the thing, as I say, like I've noticed it as well, as like I think a lot of it is because of the company you're then keeping, is that you're always like finding someone to
doing
chase.
better.
And it's like, and I think that's a good thing, as long as you're then able to like actually step out for a second and say, well, I am chasing them, and that is like priority number one, but everything else has went like pretty well up to this point as well.
Yeah, it makes sense. Right, let's switch over to the bits you don't see. So I'll just let you start. Of that journey, we've obviously touched on a couple of things that are maybe quite negative. What is some of the bits that you don't see about that?
I suppose probably working again from the start. Like the football thing, I think took a bigger toll on me than I probably realised at the time, where like I knew after I'd made my debut, after I'd like fell out the first team picture, I knew things had taken a bit of a turn, but I probably didn't appreciate like how quick that transition was from, okay, you're not as in favour, to like now you're released without a club. And I think like that was really hard, because it's like I'd only ever known success where it was like you've just from like 12, everything has been this upward trajectory where even the minor blips you've had along the way have been replaced with something miles better, and it's like just this constant journey. So like the initial being released was tough, but I was sort of very much at that point like, now I'll go and prove them wrong, like that's my mindset, I'll go and show them they've made a big mistake here. And then like probably the hardest bit was how hard it was to find a club. Like I think like I was hugely naive and probably badly advised in some instances, and it was like, wow, this is like, I'm not going to be able to find a club here, and like I've played for Hearts first team 6 months ago. How on earth like will no one sign me? Like I'm training with the greatest respect, Livingston were in like Division 1 at the time, and it's like, nah, we don't have the budget to sign you. Other places are like, nah, like we can't take you on. And I'm like, how has it got to this stage where like no one wants me, basically? And I think that took a big toll, especially because I think looking back in hindsight, some of it was very unlucky, where I think a lot of clubs, because they'd seen the high to the low, assumed there was some sort of problem
Something
there.
wrong,
And I think like actually I knew in my head like that's so unfair, because like there's not.
You can see why that's happening.
Yeah, and it's totally natural. So I definitely think that. And then like the more I think of it, the year I spent after being released, eventually signing for Hamilton, was a bit of a blur, where it's like actually you're getting paid like literal pennies, where it's like well below minimum wage. You're driving through there every day. It's not that nice. And you know, it's a great group of boys and stuff, but it's like actually I am maybe just holding on to this dream that's not there. So that was like a really difficult bit. And I think like I can now totally sympathise with people who go totally off the rails, because like as you said, I was probably quite mature, I was probably quite level-headed, and it's like actually like if I had been any sort of different character, it's no surprise to me that people go down quite a bad path when they're trying to deal with that sort of thing. So I definitely think that was a pretty low time. In terms of like the business side of things, I suppose like the initial stages were stressful off the first gym, but it was probably that like optimism where it's like, everything's going well here,
so
like everything's great,
at that age,
and
at that stage.
It couldn't have went better. And then we got locked down because of like the second lockdown. I was like, oh right, okay, like I've now got all these things to consider, and it's like, right, okay. And then again, probably like a similar thing, like everything then kind of came back. There was blips, but it was like nothing major. And then the process of moving here from the old site was like the most stressful, where it's like because I'm not very good at reflection, I've got a wee notes on my phone that's like worst business owner weeks or days, and it's like to remind me of like, things have been worse than this before. And there's honestly about a 6-week spell where like 90% of the entries are from, and it was like just one thing led to another, where there was a week here we were paying 2 rents, so we were sort of like paying the old rent, paying the new rent. We were still in the old gym, but we were doing this up. There was one week where on the Monday came in, we got told the kit delivery had been delayed, and we were supposed to be opening that weekend, so it was like, right, that's a bit of an issue. Kit eventually came, they'd sent the wrong kit. At the time, the people that were going to take over the old lease fell out, so it's like, right, now I've got 2 leases on my head for another long time, and then an accountant mess up meant we owed HMRC 10 grand that was due 2 days later.
Which is not what you need at that time.
So I was like, oh wow, like this is, and I remember getting that email at like 8 p.m. and I was in here till like 1 in the morning with like the kit people who'd eventually came trying to build it. And then I was working again at like 6 next morning. I'm like, this is going to literally kill me. So there was definitely that. And then I think probably I found actually like the last 6 months, bits of it quite tough, because I think I'd kind of built up in my head that like I knew this transition from the old site to the new site was going to be really difficult. Like I knew that's going to be hard, but I think I probably naively thought once it's done, whereas there is probably still scarring there that's like actually you had to do stuff to get that moving that you're only now feeling the consequences of it took longer to get rid of our old site than we expected. So there's financial implications to that. There's cultural implications where it's like, right, there's stuff we need to consider in the new site that we didn't have to consider in the old site. So that's then tough, where they're not as good a story as the staying up till 1 in the morning and owing HMRC 10 grand you need to find from nowhere, but they probably impact it just as much on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, like I think that's the thing, is like everyone sees the good bits, but it's like the good bits don't exist without the really low points as well.
And there's more lows than highs, right?
That's the thing. You're chasing those like the days or the moments where it's like that's the real high, and it's like it takes a few weeks of rubbish to get to that point.
100%. Right, let's go back to the football for a bit, because as you say, that's so quick from going from you're making your debut, you're starting, you're in the first team, to I'm getting released like 9 months later. What happened?
I think I would have started my first SPL start in the September, October, and then got told I was getting released in the March. So like you're not even that long. And again, I probably didn't appreciate this at the time, but it's only in hindsight I can look back and say that Jack Ross was my under-20s manager, who went on to manage Hibs and stuff like that. Him leaving Hearts, I think, was a big blow that I probably never appreciated, where it's like actually he was the one that was fighting my corner. He was really pushing me. And I think like in hindsight, I can understand Hearts' decision, where their rationale was basically, you've touched these heights, you're not going to manage it again, so there's no point in you being here. You know, that's like, you would be good enough for the 20s, but like actually you're not going to play for the first team again, so we're doing you a favour almost. And it's like, while I can see the thought process behind it, like at the time it didn't feel like that, particularly because it was like actually a lot of the guys they kept on, in my opinion, and even probably in their opinion, weren't as good as me, but it's like, yeah, but like they're not here to fulfill that role. You've kind of been and done it. So that was hard to take, because as well, I'm pretty good at not letting what other people think bother me. It's probably a skill I've had, but that was the one time as well. I was like, even like going and telling friends, going and telling family,
that's
like
tough,
people asking about it all the time. And like I remember, like as I said, my mum and dad had been the most easygoing people in the world, like never like batted an eyelid at anything. And it was just like the thought of driving home, like, how do I break this? Like, what do I tell them? And I'm like, even though I know, like, objectively, like, they won't
it's
care.
Gonna be
like,
all right,
it's fine, but it's like, how do I, like, break that news to them? And then you've got people that are, like, especially at that time, it's like, what happened? And I'm like nothing. I don't think anyone believed me. Like when I would tell them, it's like, nah, but like something must have happened. I'm like, honestly, like nothing happened. Like I expected to go in and be offered maybe another year or two, and then it was like, nah, that's not happening. And so I was like, right, okay, this is what it is now, and then you have to make your bed from there.
And what's the day like I'm sure you'll remember this as well, sitting down and going, I'm not doing football anymore?
Do you know what? I would say both times. So I always consider this in two phases, where like the giving up full time, like professional, and then just like giving up. I'd say they were probably different things, where I think like the giving up professional football actually happened quite quick. Like I remember it where it was like, I was on loan from Hamilton to Berwick Rangers at the time, and like I did okay. Like I was probably I was definitely a starter. Like I played quite well, and I remember like being in the car school down to one of the games, and I was like, actually, like you guys are getting paid more than me, but you do this 2 nights a week, and you have like a job you don't mind during the day. I was like, I've maybe been sold a bit of a dream here that this isn't what I think it is. And from that point, it was like, actually, I don't know whether I would have made that jump myself, but like when I got released, it was like, actually, I'm not interested in trying to find a new club. It's like, I'll just go somewhere part-time where I get my enjoyment back for it, I get my love back for it, I go and do this and get a career alongside it. I would say giving up football entirely was a more gradual thing, where it was like, I prefer work to this. The Tuesday, Thursday nights are getting harder to drag myself to. Dalbeattie away on a Saturday doesn't seem as appealing as it once did. And again, like full transparency, I think I would have gave it up. I think if it wasn't for COVID as the pusher, it would have been longer. Like I think it would have eked out for more and more time. And to be honest, the hardest thing I found about giving up part-time football was at the time I was at Celtic Hearts under Barry Ferguson, who I really, really liked. I had a lot of time for. He'd spent a lot of time and money trying to get me to Celtic. And actually, I'd fell out.
Celtic had a lot of money as well.
That's right.
They?
So
yeah,
they were like, it was almost like full-time in a part-time environment. But I'd fell out the team, and the sort of character I didn't want to give up while I'd fell out the team. I was almost like, right, well, I need to get back in
so that I can
then give it up, and it's on that. And so again, I think if it hadn't been for COVID, I probably would have done that, where I probably would have been like, nah, I'm just going to stick this till I get back in, and then tell them I don't want to do it from there.
Yeah, that makes sense. And ironically, I mean, you can answer this yourself, but I look at you in your position now, and I think you're in a much better position than if you just stuck around at Hamilton, or even like if you'd gone from Hearts to Livy and you're at the bottom of the, where are Livy now? Bottom of the, they get relegated championship
now.
Bottom of Premiership, top of the Championship. I think you're in a much better position now than that.
It's funny because I'm doing it tonight where like I do every like couple of months like talks at schools and stuff like that, or we'll go in and deliver workshops, and like it always grabs kids' attention when I'm like, I'm much happier now than when I was like a footballer. Like I was a footballer, and I'm much happier. And like even like guys I know that have had like success, it's like, I'm not saying I wouldn't have wanted it, but like just the type of person I am, it's like a year contract where it's not on your terms. It's okay money, but it's not like life-changing money, and there's a shelf life to it, and it's like the uncertainty, we were speaking about it before we went on, like having to move, having to do this, and it's like, actually, like, I way prefer where I am now, that like I've got some sort of control over my own destiny in life. Like even like things that happen at football that like in hindsight, not only are they probably like not okay, you question whether they're like illegal, where it's like, I remember going like, I think it was like 29 days without a day off, where we were in like every single day in a row, and I'm like, actually like,
I'm sure the way your managers speak to you as well, I've always thought that about
and
football.
I'm like, how when I was like 15 did I have people like throwing tactics boards like at my face and like think that was like all right? And it's like, well, that's just like what you grow up in. And I think like the other thing with that is like, it's that, you know, okay, you're off Sunday, or we've had a bad result Saturday, so you're actually coming in tomorrow, and it's like only now you realise when you've got staff, when you've got a team, it's like, actually that's like, you're not allowed to do that. That doesn't work. But it's just these things that happen in football that you don't get anywhere else, that again I think definitely overall has been a net benefit to setting me up for life. It's just that, okay, I'm maybe glad I'm out of that part of it.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong, if you go and play for Chelsea and you're on 200 grand a week, that's
and
fine.
people see those people, and it's like, actually the reality of playing for Livingston, Ayr, Hamilton, it's not that. It's like a very, very different thing. But you know, it's that 1% that get to that stage where it's like, this is like, you know, pretty incredible.
Yeah. And then you get Are we okay, by the way, to be here?
Yeah,
I was just thinking that.
that's
Yeah.
right. As long as you can hear.
That's sound. I had somebody on the show a couple of weeks ago. We spoke about before, the girl that was a golfer, and she was much like you, of like, oh yeah, she got to the top 100 in golf, and it's like, that's good, but there was always these people above me and better than me, and I'm sure that you were the same at football. But of all the people that I've ever swung a golf club, she's in the top 0.00001%, and you'd have been in the same with football.
It's that same thing where I say about business, that you like tie yourself to stuff where it's like, I tie myself to the guys I know that made it or played longer, and it's like, actually,
how many people kick a football?
4-year-olds that start playing football, how many get to play for Hearts against Everton? It's like, there's not many. Like, it's a small percentage, and it's like, that's what's hard to like do. And even like stuff I now consider as like a total like throwaway, where it's like, I tried to go back for a bit, played for Linlithgow Rose in the Lowland League. It's like, people like work their whole life to get to that level, and I'm like, I'll just like dip my toe in and see if I fancy it. And so that's like when you appreciate, like, okay, there is like levels to this, that it's that thing, you're never going to be number one, but you've probably done better than a lot of people have done at that stage.
And the thing I always think about football is, like, at my age now, I'm 31, like, you're starting to think about retiring, and if all you've ever known is football, like, what next? What, you become a coach or a scout?
I've got friends like that that's like, I'm approaching 30, like when I'm 33, 34, I've not made enough money to get anywhere near retiring, but I've also got no skills, no work experience, and I'm used to like an okay salary. Like, who's going to take, like, what am I going to do? Like, literally, and that's why, like, I think a lot, like, no wonder they stay in the game, even if they don't want to, because it's like, actually, well, like, what else am I going to do that's going to pay me, that's going to just get me in the door? And it's like, actually, no wonder so many just sort of hang around for various points.
Yeah, 100%. Right, let's switch across to the gym. It's something that I've always thought about working in a gym, being a PT, whatever, is the split nature of it must suck. Like, we've obviously come in at 6, you said you're open till 9. I mean, granted, you've got a team around you now, so that's going to help. But, like, when you're just a PT, what's it like?
That's the big thing. And, like, to be honest, I can have all these, like, grand things of, like, why we opened the gym. But, like, ultimately, a lot of it was to get me away from doing that as much, where it's like, as a self-employed PT, it's like, I've got clients in the morning, I've got clients at night, I might have the odd one during the day, and it's like, actually, like, I'm never going to be able to get out of that life. Like, I can charge more where maybe I need to do less of it. I can maybe, you know, attract more people that have more spare time during the day, but that is like the life of it. Whereas at least now as a team, we can kind of split that, where it's like, okay, you know, the team are having to do it, but they're not having to do it every day. They're not having to do it every night. And it's like, I think it's just a nature of it, and it's something you get quite used to. Whereas like now I actually, because I'm in the habit of waking up at this time, if I don't have to work, I get a lot done, where it's like, you know, I'm used to doing it. And I think it definitely has negatives where, like, especially in the early days, if I was like coaching till 9 at night and I was having a break between, say, like 11 and 3, I would feel guilty for relaxing. So I'm like, well, it's the work day, I need daytime, to do something. But it's like, well, actually, this is your time that everyone else is getting from 6 till 10 at night. So I think it probably inbuilt a few good habits around like output and productivity, because it's like, actually, I get a lot done. But now I'm probably a bit better at being like, well, actually, the odd times coaches are off and I have to cover multiple sessions. It's like during the day you can chill out, you can do your own workout, you can go to the sauna, whatever it is, because you've got a long day. So it's just like keeping that balance. But that is the downside to the job. That's why it's hard as well to, one thing we would love is we'd love to have older coaches, you know, we'd love to have people at a different stage of their life, but to get someone who has got kids, family, to do that continuously, it's obviously a difficult kind of sell to them, unfortunately.
And gym stuff's usually happen at family time, like 6 till 8 is probably family time.
Everyone wants to train at the time that they're not working, so it's like for you, and like that's why, again, I did it during football, and then I did it during my early days of PT, where I missed so many things. That's like, actually, I want to create something where, even though I probably work more than I've ever worked, I don't want to have to miss those things. I want to have enough of an element of control to be like, I can do these bits off my own terms, kind of thing.
100%. Now, how does it impact relationships? Because I imagine it must be hard work, especially in the early stages. I'm sure you're good now, you've been with your girlfriend a long time, but like, how does it impact friendships and like relationships?
It's hard. It's like really tough. It's probably like only recently I realised like friendships have had to give to some extent, where I'm like, actually, I probably don't see my mates as much as other people I know did, because it's like, well, I've got this going on, and then it's not just like the working, it's also the, right, okay, like, if I'm up at 7 on a Sunday to do this, I probably don't want to go out on a Saturday night. So my missus would definitely tell you the same. There was tough times in the early stages, but it's like, actually, so I never had a girlfriend at any stage throughout football because I was like, actually, it's just too difficult. Like, I am not the sort of person to do anything half-heartedly, especially at that stage. And it's like, I'm just not, there's no point in it. Whereas then, like, sort of coming into the gym, it was like, actually, the same as starting any business. It's early mornings, late nights, it's stress, and it's like, it's difficult. But I think I've always had quite a good mindset for that idea of like delayed gratification and being able to sort of share
I'm terrible at that.
being able to share that with other people, where it's like, actually, like, okay, this is rubbish now, but this will get better at this stage. I definitely think it helped as well, where like my family knew what I was like from football, so I don't think it was that much of a surprise to them that I would carry those same characteristics into business. It's like, actually, he never ate takeaways when he was 13. He went to bed at 9 o'clock. He stretched every night. Like, the things are different in business, but it was going to be the same things. And then my girlfriend had grown up around family who'd had their own thing. So again, she'd probably seen that, where it's like, actually, like, I've grown up around this. I know what to expect. So I definitely think that was a thing. And what I've probably found that's no negative is my friendship group's maybe just a bit smaller, and it's like more intertwined with my mates that I'm closest to. Because it's like, actually, if I've got limited time to see them, I'm going to try and see those ones. And I think naturally, something I was like tried to avoid for one reason or another in the early stages was being like friends with people who were also kind of like a network, where it's like, actually, it's natural you're going to have similarities with people you can relate to a bit more. So to me, it's like, it's no surprise that there's some clients that become friends. It's no surprise that people I speak to at conferences become friends. It's like, they probably get what you're going through a little bit more, kind of thing.
100%, that makes sense. Something that, this is a bit of a tangent, but something that I've thought about with a gym, right, that would always stress me if I owned it, is like safety. Like, I've got kind of key criteria as I've grown older and set up businesses. There's like, I just wouldn't want that to be part of my thing. Like, somebody can bend over the wrong way and snap their back. Like, that must be stressful.
Again, it's one of these things, like, knowing what I know now, I probably wouldn't have set up this business. Where it's like, actually,
I've got so many things like that with my business.
There is like stuff like, in terms of like risk of injury, and also like just like the cost of running a brick and mortar business, where it's like, actually, like, I see why my mates have done online stuff. I see why that's appealing. And I think like it's one of these things that, again, you just learn to live with. It's like the same way it would happen to you, like when you pay your first payroll, it's like, oh, it's a scary thought, and it's like, it then just becomes part of what you do. You have your first staff member that gets a mortgage, and it's like, actually, this is just what you do now. Whereas like you kind of do learn to live with it. I would definitely say as we've grown, it's something, I don't know if it's because we've grown or because I've got more mature or both, we've paid more attention to it. So like now we are airtight on like health and safety stuff. Like we've got all those boxes ticked. It's like, we're never going to make any mistakes on that front. And like, I think the nature of it is, as well, is like, you're never going to rely on this at the expense of doing the proper things. The nice thing about being community, about being people-led, is you've got more of a relationship with people. You know, for me, I know everyone's name that's in. I know what they do, and so it's different from being like a faceless person at a normal gym. So I definitely think that helps circumstances as well.
Yeah, 100%. Of course it does. Yeah, there's so many things about all of my businesses that I think, no, I would just never start this because of that. And to be honest, like with whatever my next thing is, which, you know, whenever it'll be, I don't know what I've actually got left. I've not thought about it, because it's like, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to do that, can't have that, can't have that. It's like, well, what can I do?
That's the thing, and you'll get to then a stage where it's that like uninformed optimism that then like 6 months into the new thing, you'll be like, ah, shit, I never realised this was something I had to think about. And it's the same, like you'll realise that more than me, but like growth comes from pain, where it's like, there's always this thing that like for the first few years, it's like, well, this is the level where it'll get easier, and it's not. It's just a new set of problems, and then it's like, this is the level, and it's like, again, it's just like,
never
it's
ends.
problems. It's just different ones than you had before. So I think it's one of those things that I definitely think, in hindsight, there are probably easier businesses to run than what we've done, but I'm sure most business owners think that about their business, that you see the challenges with it where other people see the opportunities.
And you learn, right? Like, you know, we'll apply all the things that we've learned to whatever we do next, or if you grow this or whatever, you're going to apply it to.
And I'm saying I'm good with delayed gratification. I'm not in terms of like, I just want stuff to work now. Like, I want to go and do something and I get an instant return on it. But I definitely think something I've realised over the last few years is that like, actually, I want to earn money. I want a certain type of lifestyle.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like I think the reason I'm in it is the learning. That's like actually I get to meet cool people. I get to have life skills, and I'm like actually, if it all burned to the ground tomorrow and I was left from nothing, I back myself that in a
100%.
year I would have made something where I don't
Probably
know if it would
something
be
better.
the same thing. Like yeah, it's like I would have. And like when I think of like the skills I've learned, like sales, marketing, tough conversations, management, it's like actually there's probably things that if I, God forbid, ever wanted to be employed again would make me quite employable.
Really good,
or if I
yeah.
wanted to go and start something different would give me a foot in to start that. So I think that it's easy to get caught up in the like instant ROI stuff where it's like actually there's probably like a lot of intangibles being a business owner teaches you that you wouldn't get otherwise.
Yeah, and some of the challenging times I actually quite enjoy. It's only when like see that time when you were speaking about like it's that and that and that and that and that. And when you have them, it's like, give me a fucking break.
I don't want this.
But like when there's one or two things going on, it's actually quite enjoyable.
I think the thing that shows me is like when there's nothing going on for like a week or two, it's nice, and then it's like I'm so bored. Like I need like a challenge. I need something to and even like as like I'm obviously I listen to a lot of Alex Hormozzi's podcast, and like his thing is like there's always a story. That's like actually there's no story, and I came in at 6, everything ran swimmingly, there was no issue. It's like I was here till 1 a.m, like the kit was wrong, we had to change it, we had to go to Livingston to pick up stuff so we could open the next day. Like they are the bits that are going to be a story to tell someone and share with someone, and I think it doesn't feel like that in the time, but I think like the more of these experiences you have, you get that almost like pattern recognition of like just because something's wrong doesn't mean it's a flaw. It's like actually maybe this is just the growing pain that I need to get through. And I think then the skill for someone like you or I becomes actually at what point do you call something quits, where it's like you're so used to this like stubborn pig-headedness that's like I'll get through this, that's like there is also probably a time that whether it's like a product.
Right, so we've spoken a lot about the bits that you don't see. Is there anything else that we've kind of missed? We've obviously had the business stuff, we've had the football stuff. Is there anything that's been missed?
I suppose probably it's just that bit around like mindset where it's like just the constant like niggle that's like, am I doing enough? Like, am I doing the right thing? Like, should I be doing something different? Should I be changing? Like, should I be this? Like, even like sitting doing this podcast, like you can't switch off that bit of you that's like aware of what's going on in the background, and you're like, are they doing that right? Have they done this thing? Have they done that thing? And I think like, again, it's just like a different type of challenge that's like, I'll be able to do stuff that my dad's like, oh, that's amazing, you can do, because he's had a 9-to-5 job his whole life, and it's like, oh, it's amazing, you can just make time to go for breakfast. But then it's like when I'm at home at 9 at night thinking, we need to do more of this, we need to do this, we maybe need to change this. So I suppose rather than a specific thing, it's just being able to balance your mindset and your brain about it and say like, actually, these are the challenges we face, but like I need to be able to just like switch my brain off from that. And I think like as well, I'm better at it than people I know, but I'd be a liar if I said that comparison thing couldn't be difficult. That's like, there's a very fine line between sort of striving to like work towards something and to being like, actually, this is getting destructive now. And I've definitely crossed that line in the past where it's like, okay, I'm maybe seeing this person's journey, but I'm forgetting they're 10 years longer in the tooth than me. That's like, if you give us 10 years, like we'll get to that stage, but it's just remembering that at the time can be difficult. I think as well, the nature, and like I don't know to your experience of this running a slightly different kind of business, all the benefits of our business we've spoke about become difficult from like a people pleasing avenue where it's like actually you probably make changes that are to support 1 or 2 people because they're the loudest in the room, or
and you can't do that.
And you can't, and it's like actually I think you have to learn the hard way that's like you have to do that to realize actually this doesn't work. And like it sounds so stupid even as I say it out loud, but it's like very easy to forget that like I am building this business for me and my family and my staff rather than like one member. And it's like it's really easy to get caught up in the day-to-day when someone's like, oh, you should do that. And it's like, especially like I think the way your eyes brain would work is you see opportunity in everything, and it's like actually knowing when it's like, that's not an opportunity that's 100%. Worth following. So I think it's that thing where it's like you could always do more or you could do different, and it's like knowing when that's a good instinct and knowing when like actually we just need to ride out what we've got for just now.
Definitely. My gym done that fairly recently, where maybe 6 months ago they changed the program. Basically a couple of people had complained it wasn't hard enough, And so they changed it for them, but actually 90% of the people
We're finding it plenty
it was
hard.
like, wait, no, this is too hard now. And it's like, yeah, we've made the 10% happy, but we've made the 90% who won't speak up just go and find another gym or something.
It's like I can totally sympathise with that, because like I speak to a lot of businesses where they're very jealous of our attrition or churn. They're like, how on earth can you have that many people where the attrition is maybe like 2 to 4% on average? And it's like, how can you do that? And it's like, don't get me wrong, net, it's an absolute positive. But it's like, there is drawbacks to that, where it can be harder for new people to come into unless we make a real effort to, build them up. But the other thing as well is like, you're then managing like, okay, like we need to make it tough enough for the people that have now been here 4 years, but the people that have been here 4 weeks. And it's like finding that balance with like, actually they'll find this tough enough, but they won't find this too tough. Like it's difficult to manage those moving parts. And so, yeah, I can definitely sympathise with that.
100%. Right. What are the worst days like? So I'm thinking probably that day with the VAT and the deliveries and stuff. What are you thinking when you're sitting there? Like when you get a minute to sit down and you go, oh fuck, what's going through your head?
See, it's hard because like I don't know if I'm just bullshitting myself or I've done enough like learning, I've done enough reading, podcasts, and I've been through enough. I couldn't say there's ever a time I've thought I'm not going to work out. Like at every stage, like even on those days, it was never a case of like, how will we do this? It's more like it's never a case of will we do this? It's more a case of how will we do this? I think that the thing that sometimes happens is like on those days, it's like, actually, is it all worth it? Like, should I just go and get a job? Like, should I just like look on Indeed and like see what job I would maybe qualify for? And it's like, do I need this like stress in my life? And it's like, that's probably how it feels, rather than, I wouldn't say I've had many things where, there's been the odd moment where I'm like, I don't know where I'm going to find that money from, or I don't know where I'm going to find that person for, or I don't know how I'm going to, someone's called in sick, and I don't know how I'm going to fit these sessions in with like what's going on. But there's not many days where I've thought like, I can't do it. It's more just like, is it worth doing it? And then what I've always found is like a period like that is always followed by a period where it's like, this is absolutely worth doing. This is the best thing in the world. And like, I think like, again, you need that duality of like, if you never had those like sinking lows, it probably wouldn't be as enjoyable when you have the good times or the good days. So yeah, I would say like that real question of like, should I just like go and get a job? I think the other thing that's hard is like, for me, like in a business like this, what is like next? Where it's like, there's so many different avenues you could go personally within the business. And it's like, what is the way to do it? Like, what is the best way that I should go about that? And I think like I face a lot of like internal dialogue about that to make sure I'm giving enough time to and thinking of like the right avenues of what it should be.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I don't know if I'm maturing or going backwards, but I have those days a lot more lately where I'm like, is this really worth it? I think it's maturing, but I've not quite figured it out yet.
I'd like, as I say, it gave me, whether it should or not, I don't know, but it gave me reassurance when my mentor was like, oh yeah, I do that once a month. And I'm like, oh, so like, it's not just me. Like, and I think that's, again,
it's literally everyone.
And I think that's going back to like the relationships part, where it's important to like surround yourself with people who are in a similar boat, because it's like, I can't exactly say that to the staff where it's like, oh yeah, like every month I think like I could just shut this down and like do it. It's like, it's probably not going to be great for team morale or keeping them right. Whereas I think having people in your circle that's like, actually, I could just like speak to, and who would understand it and who are like, yeah, that's normal, but if you get out this valley, you'll have at least another bit before you think that again, kind of thing.
Definitely. Something I've had a couple of times lately, and it's kind of the opposite of what you'd said there. I've always been in that position where it's like, yeah, I'll always figure it out. I've had 2 or 3 lately where I'm like, I don't think I'm going to figure this one out. I think this is it.
See, it's funny because, like, again, going back to that Hormozy quote that's like, you build evidence by stacking proof. That's like, I've done this. And it's like, actually, like, I've stacked more proof than ever before. But there's a couple of times where I'm like, I still don't know if I've stacked the proof for that.
For this thing that's so far that way.
It's like, and especially because then, like, it's that, I think that's the hard bit about being the business owner, is like, it's like the downs, but then there's still like another down to come from that, and there's an up, but it's like the down, and it's like, oh, I know that actually today feels bad, but I've got payroll to make in a week, and I've got this bill, so I know it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I think that the challenge I've definitely faced is like, as a business owner, you don't get an instant return always on the good stuff you do. But equally, I think you don't always get an instant feedback loop on the bad things you do. And so it's like, actually, I'm probably going to feel the effects of this. It's like, we had a slow month in January for sales, but I'm like, actually, it's probably because October, November, we didn't market well enough. And it's like, at the time, there's no way of knowing that. It's not like I get an instant loop to say that's bad, but now I'm like, right, okay, like that's a lesson learned for going forward kind of thing.
The thing that always helps me as well in those times, like all the kind of financial challenges and stuff, it's like, we've been here before, we can fix that. But the ones that are like, oh my God, I've never dealt with this before. This is so far, like I've bitten off more than I can chew and I'm fucked here. The thing that's really helped me is actually going like, oh, well, what if the worst does happen with that? It's like, oh, well, that actually, like, that seems manageable. Like, this one's fucked. But if that happens, it's like, well, I'll probably deal with that. And then if I don't, then, I mean, that's going to suck, but I'm not going to die. And that actually helped me.
It's the same. Like, I'm the worst for being like, ironically, as a business owner, I can be quite risk averse with certain stuff. And it's something that's helped me massively. Speaking to one of my mentors, and he's like, actually play out the worst possible thing. And I'm like, well, like here, I would probably have to like sack someone and I would have to take their hours in the first instance. So like, that's rubbish, but it's not the end of the world. And then it's like, okay, you'd maybe have to like, you'd be doing badly because you'd be losing people and you'd be losing members, you'd be losing revenue. But it's like, well then, okay, you would have less coaches to pay, you'd have less VAT to pay, you'd have less tax to pay. So it's like, it's bad, but actually, like, I just think of the worst case, and it's like there's probably quite a few layers before you get to that point. And it is when you like break it down the same way you would say like something that seems impossible, you would break it down into small chunks. Something that feels really bad, it's like, actually, I'll break that down into small chunks as well.
Definitely, yeah, I agree with that. Right, last thing. So, if you could go back to the day that you left football to start up the gym, and you can either go and do it all again, or you can go a completely different way and do something different, what would you do?
I'd do it again, and I think the only like lesson I've learned off that, I think I would do it bigger, quicker. That like I think I probably felt too small to start and did that thing where it's like I'll go in with like the safe edge where it's like I'll do it, but like I'll kind of protect myself a wee bit. Where it's like here we just kind of like threw everything in it. It's like, actually you've proven you can do it, and I think I would do it again, but just do it a bit bigger, a bit quicker.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like that. Right, where do people keep up to date with you?
So I'm just Sean McKirdy 98 on Instagram. The gym's Elevate 98 on all social media. I've tried other stuff, but Instagram's the one where I'm active. TikTok, everything like that. It's above my head. So just Instagram's the one.
I'm the same. Right. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you very much.
It's been great. And thank you everyone at home for listening. We've had somebody great on this time. If you could like, share, follow, hopefully we can get somebody just as great next time. Thank you, mate.
Thank you very much.